Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a ruling segment on the Solemn cards. So today we're going to be explaining which type of Solemn cards can negate which type of summons, as well as the two different categories of summons, being a summon that does start a chain or a summon that does not start a chain. I won't be using the term inherent summon in this video because I think that it is just straight up incorrect, which you'll be getting to in just a moment. So for example, let's look at something like Cyber Dragon. If only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and we're going to compare it to something like True King of Lithosogem. If this card is in your hand, you can destroy two other monsters in your hand and or face-up field, including an Earth monster, and if you do, special summon this card. So these two cards inherently summon themselves from the hand, however they are two completely different types of summons, so I won't be using that term in this video because it's just straight up incorrect. Cyber Dragon does not have a colon or a semicolon, which means that it doesn't start a chain, whereas True King of Lithosogem has a little colon right here, which means that it does start a chain. So basically how it works is True King of Lithosogem, you reveal it in your hand to your opponent, and then your opponent has a chance to respond as Chain Link 2. If not, you apply the rest of the effect to summon the card from your hand. Whereas Cyber Dragon, you just special summon it to your field, and your opponent cannot respond to the card in your hand because it's already on the field at that point. It doesn't start a chain. Other examples of summons that don't start a chain are included but not limited to normal summons, synchro summons, exceeds, pendulum summons, and link summons. Other effects that do start chains, obviously True King Lithosogem, as indicated by this colon right here. Also, polymerization. However, there is no colon on polymerization here, and I will explain basically why. So, spell and trap cards that are being activated from your hand or your set spell and trap zone will always start a chain, no matter what. They are going to be activated as Chain Link 1, or I guess in the case of something like Metaverse, you can activate as Chain Link 2 or 3, but they will always activate. They always start a chain or continue a chain, I guess, in the case of Metaverse. So that's basically how that works. Even though there is no colon on polymerization, it will start a chain because it is a spell card being activated from your hand and or from your set spell and trap zone. So let's go ahead and break down some of the Solemn cards. So let's start with Warning so we can better understand basically how Strike and Judgment work. So Solemn Warning reads when a monster would be summoned or when a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster. Pay 2,000 life points to negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy it. So this section of the effect right here, when a monster would be summoned, refers to a summon that does not start a chain. So like I mentioned earlier, you can use it to negate normal summons, synchro summons, exceeds, pendulum, link summons, as well as other summons such as Cyber Dragon, because Cyber Dragon does not start a chain. So you can use Solemn Warning, this portion of the effect, to negate all those types of summons. Let's look at another card here. So let's look at something like Monster Reborn. Target a monster in either player's graveyard. So this semicolon right here, obviously we know that spell cards being activated from your hand always start a chain, but in this section right here, target a monster in the either player's graveyard is the activation requirement. Then your opponent has a chance to respond. They can respond with Solemn Warning, because Solemn Warning specifically says a spell card that is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster. So you can use Solemn Warning to negate Monster Reborn. You can also use it to negate a True King Lithosogem, because if this card is in your hand, that means that the effect is a monster effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster, so we can use Solemn Warning to negate it. So Solemn Warning can basically negate any type of summon. So that's why both of these sections of the card exist, even though they seem like they are unnecessary. Let's look at Solemn Strike. When a monster would be special summoned or a monster effect is activated, pay 1,500 life points to negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So this card can negate special summons that don't start chains, as well as monster effects. So let's take a card such as True King Lithosogem. If this card is in your hand, which means that is a monster effect that starts a chain, so we can use Solemn Strike to negate it. Let's look at Cyber Dragon. So if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. So fortunately for us, that is a special summon that doesn't start a chain, so we can use Solemn Strike to negate it. Then let's look at something like Monster Reborn. Target a monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it. Obviously, this is a summon that starts a chain, and Solemn Strike can not apply either of these effects because it can only negate special summons that don't start chains, as well as monster effects, which Monster Reborn is neither of those. Let's look at our last Solemn card, which is Solemn Judgement. When a monster would be summoned or a spell trap card is activated, pay half your life points to negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So let's look at Monster Reborn. So obviously this is a spell card being activated, so we can use Judgment's effect to negate it. We can also use Judgment to negate Cyber Dragon because it is a monster being summoned. We cannot, however, use True King Lithosogem or Solemn Judgment to negate True King Lithosogem because it is a monster effect that starts a chain, and Solemn Judgment can only negate monsters that don't start chains. So that basically will just explain basically how each of the Solemn cards work. Similarly to like Polymerization, rank up magics or rituals spells are basically identical to how Polymerization functions. They are spell effects that start chains. So similarly, you can use like Solemn Judgment to negate a ritual spell or Solemn Warning to negate a ritual spell, but you cannot use Solemn Strike because obviously it starts a chain. So I hope that further explains basically how the Solemn cards work. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer, as well as any specific situations that you would like for me to answer. There's one other thing that I'd like to mention before we end the video, is that Solemn Warning, Strike, and Judgment, this section of it that will negate summons that don't start chains, will basically mean that the card never hits the field. So for example, something like a Synchro Summon for a Stardust Dragon, if you use Solemn Warning to negate it, then the card will go straight to the graveyard, so you won't even have the chance to activate this last effect here, or I guess the effect of Stardust Dragon in general, because the card was never on the field. And similarly, you could not use something like Monster Reborn to bring back your Stardust Dragon, because the Stardust Dragon was not summoned properly, because the summon was negated. So I hope that further clarifies exactly why you cannot, like, summon back Stardust Dragon through the effect of Monster Reborn, or even ritual monsters that weren't summoned properly that are in the graveyard, etc., etc. So with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in a later video. Thanks.